All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling a topic that I'm sure many of you have at least heard of, probably even seen in the news, or maybe you know someone. It's catfishing.
Ooh, yeah, catfishing. Definitely a hot topic. And unfortunately, it's more common than you might think.
It really is. And, it can lead to some pretty serious consequences, not just emotionally, but sometimes financially, too.
Exactly.
So in this deep dive, we're going to use this source, Unmasking Deception. Signs you're being catfished by your bae. To really break it down, look at the why, the how, and most importantly, how we can protect ourselves. Sound good?
Let's do it. I think a lot of people could benefit from some extra awareness about this.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. I think one of the things that always strikes me as particularly interesting about catfishing is the psychology behind it. Like, what drives a person to create this whole fake online persona?
Well, there are actually a bunch of different motivations behind it. Our source actually outlines 5 different psychological reasons why someone might catfish.
5. Okay, let's hear them.
So number 1, low self-esteem.
Right, we hear that one a lot. But why is that such a big factor specifically in the online world?
Because online, you can carefully craft this image of yourself, You can present only the most attractive parts, or even completely fabricated versions of yourself.
So it's a way to kind of bypass those insecurities they might have in the real world.
Exactly. It gives them a chance to receive that validation and attention that they might not feel they deserve otherwise.
So in a way, it's almost like they're using it as a way to boost their own self-worth, even if it's built on this foundation of lies.
Exactly. And that desire for validation, that can be really powerful, It can drive people to go to great lengths to maintain these elaborate online personas.
And sometimes it's not even necessarily about getting that positive attention. Sometimes it's about avoiding the opposite, right? Avoiding the pain of rejection.
You got it. That fear of putting their true self out there, being vulnerable, can be really tough.
Yeah, so it's like creating this buffer zone, this protective layer to shield themselves from potential hurt.
Exactly. It's a defense mechanism, even if it's a pretty misguided one. Right?
Sure.
Now, the other motivations we talked about, they get a bit more complicated. Things like the desire for control, the need to manipulate others.
Okay, and those can obviously have some pretty harmful consequences, right?
Definitely. And, sometimes it's just for personal gain or even entertainment, but other times it's straight up malicious.
It's almost scary how varied the motivations can be.
It really is. And regardless of the reason, the impact on the victim can be devastating.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that catfishing is not just some theoretical concept. It really does happen, and it affects real people's lives.
Yeah.
Our source actually highlighted a couple of real-life examples that I think are worth discussing.
Yeah, let's hear them.
Okay, so the first one they call the fake profile.
Yeah.
And I think this one really highlights that emotional toll that catfishing can take. It's about this woman, Sarah, let's call her, who meets Mike on a dating app.
Okay.
And they start chatting, really hit it off, build this whole connection online. But whenever they try to arrange a meeting in person, Mike always has some excuse. He's busy with work, he's out of town, whatever.
Sounds suspicious.
And it turns out Mike isn't even real.
Yeah.
He's this fabricated persona using stolen pictures and a made-up life story. Can you imagine?
Oh, that's brutal. To think you've built this whole connection with someone, poured your heart out to them, only to find out it was all a lie.
Yeah, that feeling of betrayal, the emotional whiplash, that has got to be incredibly difficult to process.
Yeah.
And then the second example our source gave, the hidden agenda. The one focuses more on the financial risks that come with catfishing. In this scenario, we have Tom, who meets Emily online. And things seem great at first. But then Emily starts sharing these stories about how she's in a really desperate situation. She needs money for rent, medical bills, whatever it might be.
So she's playing on his emotions, hoping he'll step in and help.
Exactly. And unfortunately, Tom, being a kind and empathetic person, falls for it. He sends her money, only to later discover that Emily is actually a scammer using a fake identity to exploit his generosity.
It's heartbreaking, really. These stories really highlight the very real consequences of catfishing.
They do. It's a reminder that this isn't just some harmless online prank. It can have serious repercussions in the real world. So I think it's super important to talk about how we can protect ourselves. We've seen what can go wrong, so how can our listeners, those who are maybe just starting out with online dating, or even those who've been doing it for a while, how can they learn to spot the red flags?
Well, luckily, our source gave us some great advice on that, and they actually highlight 8 warning signs to watch out for. Inconsistencies in their story.
Yeah. So, like, if they're telling you one thing one day and then a different story the next day, that's not a good sign.
Exactly. Or if details they've shared before just don't add up, it might be time to take a step back and investigate a little further.
Makes sense.
What else? Another big one is their willingness, or in this case, unwillingness, to meet in person. Are they always making excuses to avoid a face-to-face interaction?
Yeah, I mean, come on. If they're flat out refusing to do a video call in this day and age, that's a huge red flag.
Totally agree. It's like, what are they hiding, right? And then their online presence. Do they have much of one? Are their social media accounts really sparse? Maybe only a handful of pictures? And are those photos just like really posed with no real glimpses into their everyday life?
It's almost like they're presenting this carefully curated image, but there's no substance behind it, no real personality shining through.
Exactly. And of course, this one probably goes without saying, but if anyone you've only met online starts asking you for money, that should be a giant flashing alarm bell.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sometimes people can have genuine emergencies, but if you haven't even met in person and they're already hitting you up for cash, it's a major red flag.
Right. Scammers often prey on people's kindness and generosity, using emotional manipulation tactics to get what they want.
It's so important to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to trusting your gut. If something feels off, if you're getting those nagging doubts, don't ignore them.
Couldn't agree more. Intuition is a powerful tool, especially in these kinds of situations.
So we've talked about red flags, but let's get proactive.
Yeah.
What can our listeners do to be more, on the offensive, so to speak, when it comes to online dating?
Great question. Well, the first thing is, don't be shy about doing a little research. Verify the information they've given you. Does their profile match up with their social media accounts? Are the details they've shared consistent across different platforms? We live in the age of information. Use it to your advantage.
Right. A little online sleuthing never hurt.
Exactly. And one of the most effective tools out there is the reverse image search. Take their profile picture, upload it to Google Images or another search engine, and see if that picture pops up anywhere else. You'd be surprised how often you can uncover stolen photos this way.
Oh, that's a good tip. So if their picture is attached to a completely different profile with a different name, that's a pretty clear sign that something's fishy.
Exactly. Another thing, and we touched on this earlier, but prioritize meeting in person as soon as you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That face-to-face interaction is key. You can read their body language, observe their behavior, really get a sense of who they are.
It's about bringing that virtual connection into a tangible reality. Seeing if their online persona actually matches up with the real person. And of course, we can't stress this enough, never ever send money or share sensitive personal information with someone you haven't met in person and built a genuine sense of trust with.
Absolutely. And if you do come across someone you suspect is catfishing, report them. Report them to the dating platform or even to the authorities if you think it's warranted. You might just be preventing them from targeting someone else.
Right, we've got to look out for each other. So I think what we've learned today is that while catfishing is a real threat, it's not unbeatable. By understanding the motivations behind it, learning to recognize those warning signs, and taking those proactive steps to protect ourselves, we can navigate the world of online dating with more confidence and awareness. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and in the digital age, staying informed is our best defense against deception.
Totally. Now here's something I want you all to think about. Beyond the tips we've discussed today, what other steps can you take to cultivate a safer and more fulfilling online dating experience? What personal boundaries can you set for yourself? What questions can you ask to really make sure you're connecting with genuine people?
That's a great question for our listeners to ponder.
It is, because at the end of the day, online dating should be about connecting with real people, building authentic relationships, and having fun while doing it. So stay vigilant out there, trust your instincts, and always prioritize your safety and well-being. Until next time.
See ya.